Welcome everybody back into NerdSesh. As always, I'm Carson Brever and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are joined by friend of the show, none other than the Matthew Sponhour. How we doing today, pal?
I'm fantastic. I'm super glad to be here.
Yes.
Playoff basketball is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be happier.
Oh, that's just music to my ears. Playoff basketball has been fantastic. Before we really get into it, has there been a particular series that you've just enjoyed the most? Perhaps getting to see your glorious king avoid the sweep was nice.
Yeah, him losing in 5 wasn't the greatest thing in the world. I'm glad that it was the greatest gentleman's sweep of all time. That did mean a lot to me. But I'm going to be super lame and say, Knicks 76ers was
fantastic.
A classic. How many good games can you get into a series that doesn't even go to 7? So that one was my favorite.
Agreed. That was beyond the scope of just like best first round series that we've seen in a long time. That was best series period that we've seen in a long time, or one of the best series. Incredible game to game. But when we talk about these playoffs, it feels like there is one story, one player who is deservedly dominating the discourse right now, and that is Anthony Edwards, who put on just a spectacular display against the Suns, sweeping them, destroying their very will to exist. Then comes out in game 1 in Denver, drops 43 points on the road to ultimately take that game over the Nuggets. Matt, we'll start with you. How many guys on the planet do you think are playing better basketball than Ant right now?
Playing better basketball than Ant right now is a very dangerous way to word it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're talking right now, we mean playoffs, and his playoff numbers have been up there with anybody, and he's been playing, amazing defense too. And, should you say one right now, I wouldn't say that he's maybe the best guy in the world, but I think he has put himself into top 10 conversations. That's how I'll put it. I think he probably is a top 10 player at this point. We have a sample size now of him in the playoffs that isn't huge, but for the most part, it's been really great every time. Yeah. His shooting has been fantastic, and I think you go game to game now, assuming that that's how it's going to be for him typically. And until proven otherwise, he's one of the best creators. He's on a team that's very good, that's very well built. And I definitely feel like he's in a situation where the defense is amazing. He's a part of that, but he's not the main reason why their defense is amazing. And the way that the Timberwolves are built out, it allows him to take a lot of the offensive load, which is good, and it's amazing that he can do it, and that's why he's a top 10 player. But it also maybe gives him the lion's share of the credit because he's the one who's doing it on offense, and he does have help, but it's on the other side of the ball, if you know what I mean, if we're just talking narrative. But I think regardless, there's not 10 guys who could do what he is doing right now, I don't think. So I think probably around 7 to 8. But if the Timberwolves keep doing their thing and they beat the Nuggets and they go make a run deep into the playoffs and Ant keeps playing like this, he could move up even higher on a lot of people's lists, and it'd be very hard to argue against him.
I don't know about y'all. I'm ready to thrust him up there. Wait, what? Hold up. Pause. Wait a minute. Yeah, I'm ready to put him. I'm ready to put him like in that conversation. I think that Matt makes a great point. The Timberwolves defense is a great conglomerate. This is a great unit. Everybody top to bottom with what Cat can do defensively and how great he's been this year. Rudy Gobert is one of the greatest defenders in NBA history. McDaniels, NAW, Ant himself. There's so many good perimeter defenders here, but Ant deservedly should get the lion's share of the credit. And if we're talking specific, left of these playoffs, guys, I think I'm just taking Jokic and Luka over him. I don't know if that's crazy to say at this point, but I'm going to take him over SGA. I'm going to take him over Tatum, and I'm going to take him over Jalen Brunson. It starts with the athletic traits, right? There's just things that you can't take away from Anthony Edwards' game, like the explosiveness, the strength, the unstoppability of getting to the rim. And now that his pull-up jump shooting's like this, he really is, just unstoppable. And that's the thing is, I feel like Ant, because of how many threes he takes too, is prone to these scoring explosions, he drops 43 in game 1 against the Nuggets. I don't know, man. I haven't seen Tatum have and I know that's probably the big one, right? Matt, are you taking Ant over Tatum? Is he in that short list for you?
I think so, man. Like, I just the percentage of games that Anthony Edwards has where he just completely takes over is far higher than Tatum, just point blank, period. And I do think a little bit that Tatum is on a team where it's easier to take a backseat because there's a lot more offensive options and they're sort of sleepwalking against the Heat. So I'm not really like thinking about Tatum's numbers in the first round. Who cares? You know, that's their goals are far beyond that. And I think the Celtics are favorites to win a title for a reason. But we've seen a lot of Tatum. Maybe we're buying too much into a small Anthony Edwards sample size. He is way, way better in the playoffs than he is in the regular season, probably to an amount no one can sustain forever. But as it stands right now, I don't know. I got to respect it.
I think I got to respect it too. Dude, I mean, that's a good point. Like, it does feel like we're waiting for the bottom to drop out a little bit, right? We're waiting for the fairy tale to end. Like, I don't know. Maybe Anthony Edwards is just going to drop 40 pieces every single game he plays, man. I think that's the key part. Like, Anthony Edwards has dominated games. Like, what he is doing to close out teams, how great he has been as a pull-up jump shooter. No, I don't think it's gonna last forever, but I do think Anthony Edwards is one of those guys who takes his game up a level in the playoffs and is consistently going to rise in every scenario. Like, and you hear the players talk about the mentality. I remember, Carson, I had this one quote on the show where I was like, Ant believes his own bullshit. Mike Conley said that the other day. He was like, Ant is one of the most supremely confident dudes I've ever met. Like, he just, that's the difference to me, man. It's like the mental part with Anthony Edwards. Like, Ant is out here to take souls, man. He is out here to take teams' lives. Like, I don't know. I don't get that. I feel like that killer with Tatum, man. I want a killer, dude. I want an assassin, and I feel like Anthony Edwards gives me that. I think SGA in him, that's probably the closest one for me left in the field. Shout out Tatum, shout out Brunson. I'm only taking Luka and Jokic, I think, over Ant right now, man.
So Matt mentioned the dangerous phrasing of this question. I came up with the question, so I'm going to lean into it. If we are saying how many dudes are playing better than Anthony Edwards right now within the scope of this postseason, it's one, Nikola Jokic, and it's not even him by all that much. Now, I think there is still a real gap between them as players, but just the level that they've both played at through 5 games in Ant's case, 6 in Jokic's. Jokic, we've seen some inconsistencies just in terms of aggression. The production is still outstanding. The impact is outstanding, but Ant is playing out of his mind, dude. He's putting up 33, 8, and 6 on 66% true shooting with 3 stocks per game. And Matt, you mentioned the point about how this Minnesota team is built on the back of an incredible defense, a generational defense, in my opinion. And you feel like maybe Ant therefore gets excessive credit because that is ultimately the greatest strength of this team. I definitely felt that way throughout the regular season because this was a average Minnesota offense. Ant, as good as he was giving you 25 a night on average efficiency. There's no question that he was like a top 15 player, but when people wanted to place him in first team All-NBA conversations or whatever, that to me felt like it was giving him more credit and not giving enough credit to the rest of this incredible Minnesota team. And I still feel like some of the other guys who are playing out of their minds here don't get their just due simply because they don't have the aura or they don't have the aesthetics of Ant or because they're defensive-minded players. Like, legitimately, bro, if you had to put together the prototype for a rising superstar for NBA fans to fawn over aesthetically, it's Anthony Edwards, and the personality obviously helps too. That's why everybody is dying for him to be the face of the league and consistently play at that level. The difference to me is just how much better Ant has been in the playoffs than the regular season. And the fact that Minnesota isn't an average offense now. They're the best offense in the playoff field so far in terms of offensive rating. Ant isn't a solid number 1 option. He's been as good a number 1 option as anybody in the field. And he is absolutely built to be a playoff riser. This sort of physical dominance, the ability to get where you want on the floor, always scales. And it's why he improved across his first 2 playoff runs versus the regular season, and he's done it again. You just look at a guy like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is an awesome perimeter defender, a borderline all-defense caliber guy. When you are dealing with a physical force like Anthony Edwards, it's not just that he's so hard to stay in front of, and even if you can, he is one of the best contested finishers around the rim that we've seen in a long time. It's the ability to play bully ball to get to his jumpers. It's the fact that he can just bounce off of you and then get to those turnarounds, and they're suddenly wide open shots. And so, yes, he is shooting better than we expect, absolutely, in terms of his jumpers right now, but he is getting a lot of good looks, and he's just not missing. 48% from mid-range, 44% from three in these playoffs, and he is dominating defensively. Like, I think there's a middle ground between the two of you. Logan, if you say he deserves the lion's share defensively, that's just not true, right? Because Rudy Gobert is the best.
I did not say that. He is putting words in my mouth.
I did.
That is not what I said.
No, you did say it. I took specific note of it because I thought, well, that's just not true. But there's no question he is playing at an incredible level defensively. He's playing at like an all-defense sort of level. You just think about some of the signature possessions that he had last game. First couple possessions, clamps Jamal Murray. That incredible help block on MPJ off of the cut, off of a Jokic pass. Stripping KCP when Jokic just thought, I'll get sort of a routine entry pass in here. Like, Ant is built to be an elite defensive player when he wants to be. And he is just playing with the sort of motor and commitment to dominating the game in every way possible that he's doing that consistently. He also has been so absurdly good in the clutch. Like, you talk about guys who just feel like killers, who feel like they're built for the moment. And sometimes that's a bit nebulous. And the results don't always back up the feeling that you have. Again, I'm going to say it, of maybe a guy's aura or whatever. Ant, in fourth quarters in these playoffs, is averaging 10.8 points per game on 84% true shooting, bro. It is unfathomable what he is doing when it comes time to take over a game, to close out an opponent. So when I look at what he's doing right now, I see clear potential for an 06 D-Wade type of run. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen, because I still think surviving the Denver Nuggets is an immense challenge. And Ant still has to sustain some stuff that is really challenging to sustain. The biggest key, bar none, is the pull-up shooting. This regular season, he had an effective field goal percentage of, I believe it was just over 44 on pull-up jumpers, which made him one of the least efficient pull-up shooters at a high volume in the league. In the playoffs, he has posted an effective field goal percentage of 60 on his pull-up jumpers. To put that into perspective, Steph Curry's effective field goal percentage on pull-up jumpers this year was 50.7. He is lapping him by leaps and bounds, the greatest pull-up shooter that we have ever seen. Nobody shoots 60% on pull-up jumpers. Barely anybody shoots 55%. Ant was at 45% or so this regular season. So there's no question this level of pull-up shooting is unsustainable. He is like a 2016 Steph Curry pull-up shooter right now. We know that Ant is not that. The question is just, how well can he keep shooting it? And how much does he improve as a pull-up shooter in the playoffs compared to the regular season because of that physicality, because of the downhill threat that he poses at all times? And I do think that he improves there. I just don't think he improves by this much. So that's the biggest thing that he has to keep up, and the thing that, no matter what, to some extent, is going to come down to earth. But when I talk about the 06 D-Wade comparison, it is that moment where a guy goes from rising superstar, from a third-year player in D-Wade's case, a fourth-year player in Ant's case, and you think, oh, that's a fringe top 10 guy. He's going to be one of the faces of the league. And then suddenly, he's just there. He's undeniable top 5. He wills a team to a title. He does it on the back of generational athleticism as a downhill guard. And again, I'm not saying Ant is going to do that, but I also don't think we can say that he couldn't do that. And that's the sort of thing that you, by nature, don't see coming until it's happening right in front of you. So when you talk about Tatum, again, it is only 5 games, and that's why I don't want to completely overreact. He has been special. It is 5 games. 5 playoff games, but 5 games nonetheless. But it's better than any 5-game stretch we've ever seen from Jason Tatum in the playoffs. I legitimately feel that way. I think the physical imposition just surpasses him. The pull-up shooting, yeah, maybe it's unsustainable, but I just like the pull-up jumpers that he's getting a lot more. I think there's more variety. I think he does more physical stuff getting to the mid-range than Tatum, where he can just settle for pull-up 3 after pull-up 3.
Yeah.
Devin Booker, was out of his mind last year. Averaged 33 and 7 on ridiculous efficiency. I still think because of what Ant is doing defensively, playing as one of the best defensive players alive, it surpasses that. SGA, it's not really fair to say yet because this is his first run as a number 1, but Ant has clearly been much better in these playoffs. More favorable matchup against the Suns, but he's just unguardable. If he's going to shoot like this, which again, he can't forever, but he is legitimately unguardable and he is defending at an elite level. So it is special stuff that we're seeing from him.
I completely agree. I do think when Logan said the lion's share of the credit, you just meant in general for like the offense.
Not for the defense. Thank you, Matt.
My fault. I appreciate that fact check. I appreciate that from Politico Matt Sponhour.
I definitely agree about. I didn't mean to take away from Ant's responsibility for the defense being good. He's certainly a part of that. I do think that we've seen a number of runs, I guess I'll put it, where it's like we've seen Donovan Mitchell go crazy and we've seen Devin Booker go crazy. The way that Anthony Edwards is carrying the offense right now, I think there's a number of guys who have done that before who just haven't had the defensive personnel on the other side for that to culminate in like, oh, this team might go win the title sometimes. But I'm not going to get mad at anybody for putting Anthony Edwards pretty much anywhere. Because it's not just this playoff run. It's the other times in the playoffs he's been mostly pretty good. Mm-hmm. We'll see how the rest of the series goes for him and how the rest of the playoffs goes, but I don't think Dwayne Wade is a bad comp. In fact, I think it's like a really, really obvious one, honestly. That's the first thought that I had.
Matt, that's a great point, actually, about the defensive thing. Is like I do feel like a lot of other offensive-oriented guys would succeed in an environment like this, right? I mean, you make a great point. Like, he does get to take off a little bit because the collective is so great, right? That's such a benefit to your superstar, right? Apples to apples comparison, let's say you put Kevin Durant in a situation like this, dude, where he can just go out, go serve buckets. I'm not saying he would succeed as much because I just think Ant's the better player right now, but letting a guy take off on the defensive end is certainly a benefit, where I think that Ant is distinct from like a Donovan Mitchell or a Devin Booker, and why he's better now and just scales better is that physical imposition, though, man. Like, I just think it's a different level of strength in explosiveness, in like, you just can't guard me. Like, I when I was watching back on the tape, like, my question was, has Anthony Edwards taken a bad shot in these playoffs? Like, every look that he gets to, even like when he's missing these intermediate 10 to 15 foot floaters or jumpers, or he's right around, and these touch shots, they're great looks. Like, nobody's even contesting them. Like, that's what's been so remarkable, dude, is it's everything. The poise, the total control offensively. He gets to where he wants, man. And for the most part, he just hasn't missed in these playoffs. And Carson, I know you've pushed back a little bit on this about, like, overwhelmingly being great playmaking, but I've been impressed too with, like, him running pick and roll and setting up Naz Reid for these kicks out of the short roll, and Gobert. Like, everything about his game, man, like the playmaking, decision-making has impressed me too. But it really is, man, the difference between him and those guys is that just those physical traits just don't go anywhere, and he weaponizes them so great every single game, man. Other guys just don't have those kind of skills.
I absolutely agree that takes Ant up a level. The physicality, the defensive aspect of it. But I don't think Matt's point is, okay, apples to apples comparison. I think the point is, A, about the defensive supporting cast, but also to some extent about the sustainability. Or maybe that's not your point, but I'm going to add that to your point, because that does happen. These ascending guys play out of their minds for 10 games, and then particularly when it is on the back of insane pull-up shooting. And that makes Ant different, that he has that downhill element. But the single most lethal thing he's doing right now is the pull-up shooting. He's averaging 16 points per game off pull-up jumpers. He's shooting better on pull-up jumpers than Devin Booker did in last year's playoffs, when it was like, well, nobody's ever going to do that again. Ant has shot better than that in terms of effective field goal percentage. And so there is inherently volatility with pull-up shooting. Donovan Mitchell can have these two nuclear runs, and then he has these two clunker runs. And I'm not going to say that Ant is ever going to have a clunker because of the defensive impact, because of the physicality. But playing like this, when it's a 5-game sample size, when he's shooting as well as he possibly could, like, it is just important to keep that context in mind. I love Ant. I think he's amazing. He is one of the top 3 guys that I would choose to start a franchise with today. And he's just continued to move up that list. But we do have to try to keep things into perspective.
Well, I'll say 2 things. Part of my point is that I just think on top of him playing like arguably the best player on the planet, if somebody said he's playing better than Jokic. It's like, okay, I'm not going to sit there and like really fight you about it. He's also in maybe like the narratively perfect position right now. He is on a very good team that he carries the offense for and that doesn't have like other big superstars around him. So he will get a lot of the credit, and rightfully so, in a way that like if you flipped and put him on the Celtics and had him in like Tatum's position, with the way that team works, it might be a little bit different. Or you see with some other stars where it's like people love to say when they see the Suns fail, just the number of stars you have, there's more to building a team out than that. But if the Suns hypothetically had gone and won the title, they would have said, well, Kevin Durant can only do it with these other stars on his team. That's kind of my point. And then, honest to God, I forgot the second thing I was going to say.
Well, I see what you're saying. At the same time, though, I just don't think Jason Tatum could be doing this because it's not just volume, bro. It's efficiency. It is clutch takeover performances. Like, this is special. And if Ant was playing in Boston, I mean, yeah, the volume maybe wouldn't be quite the same. The credit distribution maybe wouldn't be quite the same. But I think
Boston is maybe a bad example because they're not even really like a superstar in the same way that I don't know who is. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. Again, he's been balling out. But I think it's just a well-built team around them.
Very exceptional basketball team.
And like I know we were talking a little bit before, and they don't like giving Gobert or Cat any credit because they're two of the most unlikable guys in the league. Like
unliked. I don't know if I would say unlikable.
Well, unlikable.
They have unlikable traits.
I don't have any like personal biases or anything against them, but I know a lot. There are groups. There are groups that really do not like Gobert and Cat. Also, though, I also think that people just gravitate towards Ant because he's got one of the best personalities of any basketball player. Like any interview, dude. If you put an interview or just a video of Anthony Edwards doing anything, I think I would sit down and watch. Like you could get me him, I don't know, live streaming Madden or something, and I'd be like, you know what, man? Yeah, I'll kick and watch Ant do this. Ant's going out to eat today at I don't know, man, at McDonald's.
Zaxby's.
Yeah, I'd watch Ant go get some McDonald's. Like I would literally watch Anthony Edwards, I think, do anything, man. That he's just captivating, dude.
I think that's absolutely a component. It is the play style. People love athletic guards, and it is totally the personality. Like, that's why this dude is going to be a face of this league for a long time. That and the fact that he is really, really good and is playing out of his mind right now. So, along those lines, Minnesota obviously poses several challenges to Denver based on the fact that they just took game one off their home floor, and we just know how great this team is, how dominant they were against the Suns. Logan, what's the biggest thing that Denver has to figure out in this matchup to bounce back from game one?
I mean, I'd say I'd throw Anthony Edwards one. I mean, that's the key, right? You got to figure out how to throw Ant off his game somehow, and that task may prove too much. Maybe the Nuggets just don't have the personnel to throw Ant off his game. I'd say play him more physically, throw him a lot of different coverages. It really sucks because we were talking about this in the preview, Carson, about what they do defensively. We were like, can they move Aaron Gordon off of him? And I don't think you can. I think the Timberwolves are just too damn big to take a guy like Gordon off of a Cat or off of a Gobert from the low block. I just don't think you can sacrifice the size. And so that means that you're asking KCP to step his game up. I'm playing him more physically. I'm throwing him different coverages. I'm throwing surprise doubles. I'm giving him different looks. And I think I'm going to sell out on Ant a little more, man. That's probably my first key. I think there's a lot of things that the Nuggets need to change to get back to 100%. I still don't think we've seen the Denver Nuggets throw like anywhere close to their best punch, anywhere close to 100%. Like I think Jamal Murray needs to get going. But the first key is just figuring out how to slow down Anthony Edwards even like 10%, man. I don't know if that's a feasible answer, though, man. I don't really know at this point with the level that he's playing at and how dominant he's been as a pull-up jump shooter, if that's even like a reasonable expectation that the Nuggets can just try. It's like trying to figure out how to slow down Jokic. Luckily for Minnesota, they have, a good recipe. I don't know if there's a good recipe for Denver, but that would be where all of my focus goes, man, is figuring out how to just slow down Anthony Edwards any tiny bit.
Well, one thing, I'm looking on ESPN right now. Rudy Gobert questionable for game 2.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw.
Because his child is to be born.
Fair enough. Congratulations to him.
But that would be a pretty big thing for Denver to figure out. Have all the opposing team's players have children. They'll be unavailable.
Yes. And it'd be tough in this short a time frame.
It would.
So,
but with modern science, who can say, right? I mean, incredible things happen every day.
Right. My opinion on it is like, you're not going to stop Anthony Edwards unless the pull-up shooting becomes worse, right? Mm-hmm. Which maybe you can hope for, but it's got to be the other way around. It's got to be your top dudes have to lock in. Mm-hmm. You're going up against a legendary defense, okay, but you have a legendary offensive player. And I've been thinking all day about that one call when Brett Favre throws the interception. This isn't Detroit, man. This isn't the Lakers, dude. Like, the whole, like, we're going to fool around and then just pull away at the end. That's not how this goes. And they went down 14 early, and, like, none of that, man. You have to be locked in. Jokic, when he is at his best, is just a zero mistakes, completely unguardable beast. And now it just doesn't feel like he's completely locked in. I mean, 7 turnovers, I don't want to take away from Minnesota's defense. The reason why he has 7 turnovers is because he's going up against such a good defense. But, like, some of those are avoidable mistakes. And it's just not right to see him play like that. On top of that, I could go to Jamal Murray as well, who, you know, part of the reason why the Nuggets have worked out is because Jamal Murray always is, like, going to that next level in the playoffs. And if he's playing like he does in the regular season, where, like, you know, he's never been on an all-star team for a reason, the Nuggets aren't as threatening against the defense this good. He's got to start hitting his shots. So I know that might seem like oversimplifying it, but you're not going to all of a sudden, like, figure out how to make the Timberwolves defense suck and it's going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. Mm-hmm. You have to be great. So I think it's up to Jokic to just be the best player in the world and do his thing no matter what. I need that 2023 Western Conference Finals Jokic where it's, you know, 24 seconds of perfect defense followed up by the most ridiculous shot you've ever seen, or a perfect pass and great shooting around him, finishing plays. That's what they've got to get.
I agree. My focus primarily here is on getting the best versions or better versions of Jamal and Jokic and doing what you can to deliver against this defense. Because when it comes to the question of Ant, I think that they're guarding him properly. When I look at the pick and roll coverages that they threw at him, primarily Jokic hedging and recovering was quite effective. He's playing out of his mind. They don't have an option who can guard him, bother him in single coverage. And I don't think you can move KCP off of him because Aaron Gordon is so essential on Cat and as a backline defender. But when they were throwing those hedges at him out of pick and roll, and particularly when they got him to pass, because when you throw that second body at him off a hedge, first of all, you're taking away those pull-up jumpers and you're making it harder for him to drive, right? He's just seeing 2 bodies off rip. He only created 7 points on 11 pick and roll possessions when he passed. I thought Denver really defended well in those spots. They rotated their asses off, which is what you have to do, because Jokic has to recover to Gobert as the roller, which means somebody else has to tag him first, which means that weak side shooter is going to be open, but Ant mostly isn't just going to make that skip pass directly to him, which is what is going to beat that coverage most effectively. It's probably going to be a couple swing passes, and Denver was doing a great job of having the low man get out to the corner and affect those shooters, contest them at the very least. And Ant doesn't really make that pass just off the roll to Gobert, and when he did in this game, Gobert was confronted with a low man who wasn't even necessarily the most physically imposing. Gobert's lack of skill and discomfort in those spots was just kind of exposed, and like he struggled. It was an ugly Gobert game offensively, although he was amazing defensively, and Jokic is fighting hard to recover. So that's just your best bet to me against Anthony Edwards. Try to make him beat you with those really difficult skip passes and just rotate your ass off defensively. And the Minnesota supporting cast offensively is good, but they didn't get a lot of easy shots out of ant pick and roll for his teammates. He stepped up and just made some incredible shots because that's what he's doing right now. But I felt like the coverage was correct, and you hope that he just comes down to earth a bit. So I do look at that two-man game. First of all, Jamal has to be much better as a shot maker, particularly because he's not going to get anything easy in this series. Matt, as you said, with Rudy in that roamer role, with Cat on Jokic or with Nas on Jokic, whoever is guarding Jokic out of pick and roll can stay with him on the roll because you know that you have Gobert and backline help, and the guy is such a monster that he can challenge Jamal around the rim and he can play those interior passes to Aaron Gordon. And right behind Jamal, J-Mac is going to be working his ass off, getting around that screen, and he's so long, and he's going to bring back pressure. Jamal is going to get funneled in to Rudy Gobert, and he's not going to challenge him at the rim. He can make a couple incredible layups. We saw it last game, but it's not going to be a consistent high percentage option. So his shot diet is going to be a lot of floaters and a lot of mid-range pull-ups. That's a win for the defense when you're talking about the Murray-Jokic two-man game. This is what we said in the Lakers series, who we saw throw a similar coverage at times. But if you are able to turn the Jokic-Murray two-man game into Jamal Murray pull-up jumpers, like Jamal's a great pull-up shooter, but that is a win. That is better than getting Jokic those pocket passes and what he can do as a floater and a passer in those spots. And Jamal just has to shoot way better on those shots. Like, those aren't easy shots, but Jamal is a great shot maker. In these playoffs, though, he's 27% from mid-range. He's 31% on floaters. That's not even close to cutting it. So above all else, before anything else, Jamal just has to be Jamal Murray because he hasn't been that guy so far, and that's been a problem throughout this entire playoff run. Jokic also has to be a lot better, though, and I like the pick and pop as a counter in the two-man game to how they've been playing things, but he has to hit those jumpers. He took more pick and pop threes than you really ever see from him in this past game. He just only made one of them. I think he was 1 of 5 specifically on pick and pop threes. When he does get those pocket passes, when Karl Anthony Towns, the screen defender, whoever it is, feels the need to get in front of Jamal and challenge him, then Jokic just has to read Gobert perfectly because he can get to those floaters, which are 65% shots. But we saw final minutes of the game in game 1, he tries to throw the lob to Aaron Gordon, which normally that's the unstoppable offense, right? It's not just the two-man game, it's the three-man game. Murray Jokic pick and roll with Aaron Gordon in the dunker spot. Rudy Gobert is just different, man. He read that. He was able to recover and use that special length and just made a huge play. So that's the thing. Jokic has to read Rudy perfectly. He has to just outsmart him in those looks. And unfortunately, the Nuggets don't have anything close to an Aaron Gordon replacement who can counter this look with corner shooting because that's the solution, right? Gobert can't roam off of a shooter, but if you take AG off the floor, you just lose way too much. You lose what he brings defensively. You use that size and interior finishing. You lose what he does on the glass. You just need size in this matchup. So I don't think that that's an option. They have to work within a reality where Gobert is going to be in the roamer role and that is going to be effective and it's going to muck things up. But you just have to be better as shot makers and ultimately decision makers as well. I think outside of that two-man game, the pick and roll, Jokic just has to be better too, though. He has to bully anybody and everybody in single coverage, especially Gobert, because when Gobert was just matched up with him on an island, they didn't have anybody in roamer role and help. That was when Jokic found his most success in this game. Rudy's awesome defensively. Jokic is just mostly going to give anybody buckets in single coverage. So when he gets those looks, he has to go. And even when he has Nas on him especially, I thought he can bully more than he showed in game 1. But he just has to be aggressive in those spots. Has to take better care of the ball. You mentioned like the locked in factor, Matt. 14 turnovers in the last 2 games. It's unacceptable and it's so uncharacteristic, but there's just several moments where, yes, Minnesota makes some awesome plays defensively, but like a careless pass to KCP that Anthony Edwards picks off, just being caught off guard by Nas stepping in front of him off an inbound, and he travels, the 3 in the key to open the game. Like, just stuff that you can't have happen. I want to see more inverted pick and roll with Aaron Gordon because I think that that's a very effective way to counter having another big on him, because he's going to have a quickness advantage. They'll switch those actions and put Cat on him. You leave Cat trailing the play. Gobert has to step up to challenge the Jokic floater. You throw that lob. I think that is a devastating thing that they're not going to make the backbone of their offense, but you implement that a few times a game. And just a major key is staying aggressive, staying focused, because too often that hasn't been the case in these playoffs from Jokic. He's come out slow and content to just be passive in first halves, or he hasn't taken good enough care of the ball, and you can't afford that. Like, there's just no way. This Minnesota team is way too good. This Minnesota team is way better than anybody they faced last year, maybe better than anybody they could face this year. And it felt like Jokic just wasn't fully ready for the intensity of game one, and he took 25 shots, which to me is a good thing, just seeing him dial up the aggression like that as the game went along. But they got smacked in the mouth early, and you just need consistent, aggressive Nikola Jokic. And I still think, even as awesome as this Minnesota defense is, and as good as Ant, as amazing as Ant has been, if Jokic and Jamal play up to their potential, Denver should still win this series. Those guys just didn't play really all that close to their potential in game one.
I concur, but it's a little concerning, like you guys have mentioned, how off. Like, I don't know, like the Nuggets haven't looked like engaged yet. Like they haven't, like Matt said, we just need to see him hit the lock-in button one time. I don't know if we can just expect that flip to switch. Like, I think the Jokic thing's the biggest thing, Carson. He's got to take over, especially when the offense is struggling. And he did it in the fourth quarter. Like, he was fine with taking shots, but I think it's got to be a more concerted effort, like, all game long. That stretch at the start of last game, he was content with letting his other guys find his shots. And I get it. Like, you're not expecting all of your teammates to go cold like that, but in those bad long stretches, man, you got to break them up as the team's lead guy.
Can't let MPJ ISO Rudy Gobert twice. That can't happen. No more MPJ ISOs on Gobert ever, please.
No.
I've been underwhelmed by those guys, man. Both of them have to be leagues better, dude, and we haven't seen it really in any game for 4 quarters throughout all of these playoffs.
Yeah, so I think our takeaway here is that Jamal Murray should make more shots.
Yes.
And Jokic should try harder. And
pretty close.
If they can do those two things, they'll be all right.
I agree. No, I genuinely do agree. And also, Jokic has to make more shots. Like, his shot making just wasn't great in game one. He left a couple shots in single coverage where I thought he got a good look, and he just missed. He's 2 of 9 from 3, mostly on pretty solid looks. So those two just have to step up. And this Minnesota team is going to be a huge challenge no matter what, but that's an exceptional offense. It's particularly an exceptional clutch offense, and they got worked in the clutch in this game because Ant was great and Naz Reid was great. They just got to be dialed in, man. No wasted possessions, no turnovers, and you got to make the good looks when you get them because the margin is very, very slim right now. If Rudy doesn't play, I would quite confidently pick Denver to win game 2. I just think Ant, of course, is their best player. And I really like Cat, and I think Cat gets the short end of the stick, but there's just no question that Gobert is their second most important player. What Cat does defensively in this particular matchup is super important. It allows them to play this coverage, but without Rudy on the back line,
right.
you lose so much of what makes you special defensively.
And I'll be real with you, man. I'm a little nervous. I mean, I'm a big Jokic guy. I really like Jokic.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best player in the world, all that.
Yeah.
I promise you, if he goes out like this, if this is how the rest of the series go, it's going to be ugly, man.
Oh,
the whole, like, he doesn't really care that much stuff is going to be a lot less cute. Not that it ever really is, like, you know, it's fine, it's whatever.
Yeah.
But it's going to turn sour pretty quickly. And the people who say he's only good because of analytics and it's only his VORP, which, you know,
VORP
is nonsense
merchant.
regardless, obviously.
He's fat. He can't play defense. He's the worst player on the team, man. Why did we ever say this guy was the best in the world? It's all going to flip on its head, man.
I do still have faith.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be special. But this is the toughest matchup. Like, we've known Minnesota guards him way better than anybody else.
It's absolutely the toughest defense that he's played.
Yeah.
There's not a question about it. And so far throughout his career, I feel like most of the time he's done like what I expect or more as far as playoff success goes. Like, he doesn't go win the finals every year, clearly, but the years that he doesn't, it's like, well, he's pretty young here, and he, you know, going up against the 2020 Lakers, or like, well, here he's up against the 2022 Warriors, and he has nobody else on his team. It's just him out there. Outside of that, but if they lose this series, it is a disappointment. The idea, it's win the title or bust for the Nuggets. And if they don't, because it's 7 turnover Jokic game and just bad shooting, people are, there's going to be some validity to people ragging on them. So I don't know.
I've already seen people making those takes, man, talking about, I can't believe y'all thought a slow-footed, big man like this was going to run it back. And I'm like, all right, guys, we're 1 game into the second round. Like, don't get me wrong. If Jokic underperforms his Herculean expectations, like, you're right. He won the championship. Now the standard has changed. The bar has been moved. It is no longer get to the finals, overachieve, do this. The standard for Nikola Jokic is now win the title. So if he falls anywhere short of that, one, he's going to get criticism. If he plays like this, it's going to be warranted. But we're just going to go so far in the other direction where it's going to be, oh, is Jokic top 5? Is Jokic top 10? Is this?
I can't believe you guys ever thought Jokic was good.
Exactly, man.
It's so funny because he deserves criticism for this past game. Game 5 against the Lakers, that first half was really as bad as we've seen him in the playoffs. Like, these last 2 games have been super underwhelming from him, and they need him to be better. He's still averaging 29, 15, and 10 on 65% true shooting in the playoffs and has been the best player in the world. Like, that just speaks to how absurdly high the standard is. But this is an awesome series, dude. This is just so exciting. Such an amazing atmosphere. I cannot wait for game 2, and I hope this goes 7, man. I want to see as much of this basketball as possible.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's take it out east. Because the story of the West has been the Timberwolves and Anthony Edwards. Probably the story of the East, though, has been Jalen Brunson and the Knicks. Surviving the Randall injury, surviving that just war of a first-round series against Embiid and the Sixers. Matt, how far do you think Brunson can take this team?
I mean, like this year?
Yeah.
I certainly think they can beat the Pacers. I mean, the big question was for the Knicks going in, are they going to be able to survive no Randall with all the attention on Brunson? And early it was like, okay, he's really struggling out there. It was really bothering him. He starts to adjust a little bit later, starts to, involve everybody a little bit more, and they do. Now you're going up against a defense that isn't very good. And with the Pacers, I feel like they absolutely, it's just not nearly as good, not nearly as strong. I do think maybe they were helped out a little bit. I thought Embiid was really limited defensively, especially like with how much he could contest things at times around the rim. He wasn't as 100% as he could be, but I still think the Pacers defense, I mean, to be honest, letting how some of these injured Bucks teams test you was crazy. And the amount of times where they just lost in the playoffs on defense was wild. Yeah. So I think the Knicks can win this series. I think, though, if you go into a Celtics Eastern Conference Finals series, which, no offense, Cavs, that's what I'm going to assume happens. Yeah. When you get that amount of attention on you, it's probably going to be a disaster. I don't think many players could possibly survive it. So I think they can make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think that if they make a big move this offseason, I'd be really interested to see what their ceiling is. I know there's questions about them having a 1A. I do wonder if they can become sort of an outlier team that is a serious title threat, but maybe doesn't have a top 5 player. So I really like what the Knicks are building, obviously, and a lot of the dudes on there have been super impressive. But I'd say Eastern Conference Finals this year, probably their cap.
I think we're fundamentally aligned, and I think you had a big key there, dude. It doesn't feel like the Knicks are very far off, and they are constructed in a very unique way. The defensive foundation, the one really small guard. I know Carson made the 76ers Allen Iverson comparison a while back. Pretty good one, too. I mean, dude, if they can get another off-ball weapon, a Mikal Bridges, that's an ideal one, man. If we can get all them Nova boys in New York together, you get Brunson,
Eric
DiVincenzo,
Pascal.
Hart. Dude, let's bring them all.
Jeremiah Robinson Earl.
Who hit
Amari
the jumper?
Spellman,
Jenkins?
Chris Jenkins.
Let's get Chris Jenkins back out there.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. If the Knicks can somehow make that deal done, I do think they have a championship ceiling. It's unique, but in all my years of basketball watching, I've never seen a team consistently win in the way that the Knicks do, with so much heart and energy and like effort plays. And like, I know that we can get so hyperbolic with some of these teams, but literally, I've never seen a team make so many little effort plays that lead to a victory. It's awesome. And I think they're walking to a death sentence against Boston. I just think the burden on Jalen Brunson's shoulders is too high. Like, he leads the NBA. I think he leads the playoffs in field goals per game. I think he leads them in drives per game. It's tough. And this isn't anything against Brunson. I think Brunson, that boy's a dog. Like, he is built for this kind of load on his shoulders. Like, I think he is a guy that I can trust to get into the thicket of trees every single game, every single possession, generate a good look, and keep going. Like, I just think he's built for it. But against Boston, it's just going to be too much. Derek White, Alex Caruso, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brunson, right? It's not just the personnel that they can throw at Brunson. I think it's the fact that if Boston turns it on, that they have more athletes and bigger guys that can match New York in their advantage on the effort and energy categories, right? That's why they beat out Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a team that's very similarly talented to them, but they just outwork them because of their athleticism, their physicality. I don't know if they can outwork and out-athletic Boston. I think they can make life really hard on Boston, and I think they can make it a competitive series, but I'd probably take Boston in 6 or something like that. I just think that's where it gets a little too much for Brunson. But I love the Knicks. I love their culture in New York. And I think you're right, Matt. If they can figure out how to take some of these pieces, and they've got assets, man. That's the encouraging thing. They've got some intriguing assets that they could make that move for the star that puts them over the top, man. They're not far away.
They're not far away, but it is a very, very difficult path beyond the Eastern Conference Finals, where I picked them to go, mostly because it's a favorable path, and the East isn't all that great this year, and injuries obviously factor in with the Bucks and whatnot. But I definitely expect them to beat the Pacers, and I would be surprised if they don't, even though Indiana does have the more dynamic offense, just because I think that defense is so lacking. New York has the best player on the floor, and they ultimately just have such high-quality role players, such a great defensive identity. But when you're talking about knocking off a Boston, even if KP isn't out there, if KP isn't on the floor, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I'd say it's a very slim chance. That's where the offensive burden does become just too great. Like, Brunson can do a lot to carry the load. He is balling out right now. The efficiency is rough. A lot of that because of the first 2 games of last series, but he's never going to get a lot of easy shots, right? He's going to take a lot of tough shots, but he's a tough shot maker. But the historical precedent, when you were looking at this level of usage, this level of load on one man's shoulders, over 36% usage rate, which is where Brunson is right now. The only players to ever make the finals carrying that sort of load, LeBron in 2015, who lost, but of course that is a playoff run in which he loses both Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving. Right. Allen Iverson, go ahead, say something about that, Matt. Let's hear the spiel.
I just agree. I say correct. He did lose.
He did lose both of them. He did. AI in 01, which is like the prototype specifically for small guard carrying defensively oriented team. But just when you think about a guy who had good players on his team, but did not have good offensive players on his team. So it's just like, AI, we need you to eat up these attempts. We need you to create everything. Lost in the finals. Wouldn't have made the finals if the East were nearly as good as the West. And then Michael Jordan, of course, won 3 times with the usage rate this high, which is actually pretty crazy because those are the only 2 other finals appearances, LeBron and AI, who were both clearly outclassed once they got to the finals.
Matt, did you hear the dude who won both times?
Did you hear that? 3 times.
Come on,
3.
man.
Can you believe
it's
that?
It's all about how the teams are built, man.
Well, here's the thing. There is a duality to this in that having an overly ball-dominant play style out of preference, we know isn't the best way to maximize the success of your team. And there are examples of that throughout NBA history. Also, though, this is often born out of necessity. For example, 2015 LeBron, of course, is born out of necessity. Right? Nobody else is going to create shots. 01 Iverson is born out of necessity. And Jalen Brunson this year is born out of necessity. So it's not a Brunson thing, even though I don't think he's a tier 1 top 5 guy. I still think he's amazing. But it's just the lack of supporting creators. Last team to win a title without a second 18-point-per-game scorer which the Knicks are almost certainly not going to have. They don't have one right now in the postseason, was the 2014 Spurs, who were like literally the ultimate team, right? But had way more creators because Tony Parker didn't average 18 points per game. He was still a very high-level offensive player. Manu didn't average 18 points per game. He was still a very high-level offensive player. It's an entirely different dynamic. And even with Brunson doing everything he can, like, he's still producing a 52% true shooting. Like, it's just impossible to play legitimately efficient offense when you are this reliant on one guy, and that one guy doesn't have, like, huge physical advantages. Because, again, it is so much about pull-up jumpers. It's about, all right, I'm drawing two defenders. I just got to figure out how to get a tough bucket here. So it's very Iverson-esque, but even when they defend their asses off and rebound like hell, and even if the spot-up jumpers do well, all of which I expect them to do, there's just a ceiling on that, man. There's a ceiling. You reach a point where it's, all right, you're getting 48 minutes of Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, and Jalen Brown. One of those guys is on you at all times, and they have way more offensive weapons, and a man can only do so much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I think they're headed. But they have a lot of things going. They're a very good basketball team.
And they're just eking out these wins. You know what I mean? The key thing is there's nothing easy. Everything is labored. Everything is difficult. Everything is grimy. And I just don't think the Knicks defense can counteract that by disrupting Boston's offense enough, man. But I mean, it's awesome. I mean, this is awesome for the Knicks, man. They haven't had anything to smile about in I don't know how long. Like, this is a moment in time for New York, man. And I think they got to capitalize on the window that they got coming up, man. I'm getting Julius Randle out of town ASAP, gentlemen.
I saw
ASAP.
Big Boss Man Colin and our friend Jason were talking about a Durant to the Knicks trade, which is interesting in the sense that it gives them number one offensively. I don't think the gap between Durant and Brunson is big at this point. The problem is, you give up an OG Anunoby, man, I wouldn't do that. I don't know if that was in their theoretical trade. I just saw the title, but I wouldn't do it.
I think one of the strengths of the Knicks and their team-building strategy, maybe not even their strategy, just the way things have played out, is that they're pretty young, actually. They're not a roster that's filled with a bunch of 30-plus guys, at least from their most important players. And a lot of times you can put together a good team, but you make it so old. I think that's about a lot of teams right now. You remember when the 2020 Lakers were super old? Well, dude, there's how many teams right now are probably even older than them trying to go win titles? It's ridiculous. And when you do that, you hurt yourself in two ways. Number one, older guys are more likely to get hurt. Making the finals and winning the finals is about staying healthy more so than almost anything. I'd love to ask you guys. I meant to, because you guys just have that encyclopedia knowledge that I don't. What is like the last time that a team won the finals with like a major serious injury?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's been a long time, man.
And I mean like in the finals. The player had to be out for
the guy
games
was
in the
still
finals
out.
itself.
Boy, is it rare. I mean, you have instances where a team makes the finals, the 99 Knicks actually being one of the most famous.
Making the finals is one thing.
Winning it all. Okay. I'm going to try to think here. There's just not that many teams who are even missing a starter, bro. Like, I'm thinking about the 1978 Bullets down Phil Chenier, and they still found a way to pull through.
I mean, this is the point I'm making. I mean, I started looking back, and I'm like, Kevin Love missed a game of the 2016 finals. Dante DiVincenzo
he was
out. The 2018 Warriors had Andre Iguodala miss a couple of – like, this is the level of stuff we're talking about. So when you build an old team like that, you're just making it so unlikely that you're going to get the breaks. And then on top of that, because you're so old, the odds that those guys even stay good enough where their ceiling is a title is it's very short. It's going to be very few years where they have the opportunity to do that. You're giving yourself less rolls of the dice. If I'm the Knicks and all of a sudden I trade for Kevin Durant, I'm putting myself in a position where he's a great player. He'd be such a good fit because he's so strong off the ball and he can be that tough shot hitter, which Brunson is, but Kevin Durant's got that size that makes it a little bit different. But then it's like, if we don't win the title this year, what are we going to do? And the thing is that Kevin Durant himself has had that happen to him with the Nets in New York, where that team probably could have won a title. Probably there was a year where it's like, if they had stayed healthy when they lost to the Bucks, I think they would have won it all. But the team fell apart, and it was so top heavy, and everybody got banged up because they were older, and Kyrie is injury. It's just difficult, man. So if I'm the Knicks, I would rather maybe go after a little bit of a smaller name, and give myself as many opportunities as possible, and then hope, hey, I like playing the odds of like I'd take our best chance out of 5 years rather than a little bit better, but we only get one or two shots at it.
And it's not just the fact that they're young, too. Well, one, a superstar trade can set you back if you go and get the wrong guy. If you pool up too many assets to go get a guy that's over the hill, it can set you back for years. The other thing that the Knicks have going for them, too, is that they're pretty good with their cap situation. There's nobody making an egregious amount of money here.
Yeah.
Like Jalen Brunson is on a very star-friendly contract. OG Anunoby is on a very good contract right now. Like, you may not like Julius Randle. Julius Randle isn't making an exorbitant amount of money for a guy that's at his level, right? There's not a imbalance. Like with the Suns, the big reason they're screwed. You're getting $50 million to Bradley Beal. Like, and that's where the Knicks really have to be precise with the guy that they go in on, because I like the hypotheticals as much as you do. I like the KD trade, right? And in theory, that sounds awesome. That'll put him over the top. I like a hypothetical LeBron trade to New York if you can swap out Julius Randle. That's an awesome deal. But again, like you guys said, I mean, I would too, I think.
I would do that.
I would.
Because then I think it's like maybe they're the title favorite. If you, I don't know what exactly that looks like, but some sort of
there's obviously
LeBron swap,
with all things, there's a balance, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying you can't go after somebody who's older, depending on like what it costs or whatever. If
whatever
you told
the
me
balance
it was Randall
is,
and a first for KD, it's like okay.
Yeah, whatever the balance is, once LeBron comes into it, Matt forgets it. There's no longer any balance. There is a LeBron. Just get LeBron.
Yeah, you can't win with these super teams, is what everyone likes to say, and then they got to discount like all the LeBron titles over the last 10 years.
Oh, super teams. They're admitting they're super teams. Oh, help. He had so much more help.
No, it's not. That's not true.
Counting up all the all-star teammates LeBron had, Darren Williams, all-star.
And he had Rondo, and he had Dwight Howard.
And Derrick Rose, and Isaiah Thomas.
Dude, that's the funny thing.
But yeah, LeBron did play on the star-heavy teams, and that is what people meant by super team. But I also do kind of believe that super team is one of those, like, are we debating basketball or, like, what this word means? Superstar, same thing. It's largely semantics, but I think the Knicks ceiling, they can be a weird title team. I really do believe that. I think they should be careful, but they have a lot of room to be aggressive for how good they are now. And certainly, I agree, Carson, that like part of the reason why they can make the conference finals even with a major injury is because their path is easy. But I also think they're a very good team, healthy on top of that.
And Philly wasn't an easy first-round draw. It's much more Indiana being an easy second-round draw. Philly was a top 3 team in the East.
Yeah, and even with the injury to Embiid, the Knicks weren't playing perfectly healthy, and Embiid still played very good basketball. That 76ers team maybe just needs to. They're gonna have a very weird offseason, but I guess that's a different thing. I just think there's always a team. It is. It's a very strange position to be in, where it's like you've got like 2 guys and then
everybody else
money, and
we'll see. Yeah, what do you want to do?
But I'm thinking that might be a good thing.
It could be
watching that series.
Could be. I think there's some guys worth keeping around, but I also think you can open up a real third option there. Like they've got the flexibility. Philly's going to be interesting. New York is also interesting. I really love Brunson. I love so much about this team, and the ideal outcome is upgrading Julius Randle as the number 2, like it quite literally always has been. And I do think they need a really good number 2. Maybe they don't need somebody to be better than Brunson because they're so exceptional at so many things, but I think they need a more consistent number 2 than Randle. If we're talking about them winning the title, I think Randle...
I agree.
Which is a really high bar, but Randle has just such a volatility. There's really good stretches. There's also really bad stretches.
Randle's consistent in the playoffs.
He is quite consistent. He's exceptionally consistently a 14-point per game on 30% from the field playoff performer. But shout out to the Knicks and them doing this without Julius Randle. All right, let's reflect on the first round here for a moment. We've looked forward to the second round some. Matt, we'll start with you. Which team's first round performance surprised you the most, for better or for worse?
I think a lot of this actually went kind of to plan, maybe. I thought Philadelphia could challenge New York, and they did. It was a toss-up to me, and it only went to 6, but it was a toss-up.
Yeah.
The Heat, and Celtics, whatever. The Bucks were so injured. What do we really have to say about that series?
Yeah.
I think my answer probably is Phoenix surprised and was terrible. And I'm not trying to say that, again, if maybe that's one of those takes where it's like, wow, Phoenix was really bad, and that's like sort of kind of taking away from the Timberwolves by saying they were bad. I don't mean it like that. But to not be able to take a game off of those guys when the whole thing is like, well, we can outgun you, that should at least get you one where it's like Kevin Durant and Booker are just that good that, okay, they're going to shoot 50% from 3 one game, and wow, that's what you're going to get against Phoenix. To not even get that makes them feel like probably, one of, if not the single most hopeless contending teams right now. I don't know where they go forward is my takeaway after this. I don't even think that they can be like a sort of fringe title contender. And his name is slipping me, but the guy running the show there talking about how like, we're just gonna we're just gonna be more aggressive trading first round draft picks because we got good players now. It's like, that's your philosophy for building this thing out.
Also,
it's like guess what, dude? If it was that easy, everybody would do it. Certainly, being aggressive with future assets to win now is a part of a lot of good teams' strategy. And I think people have honestly become a little bit too low on that. Oh, trading for a star can never work now because Phoenix has been bad. Well, I wouldn't go that far. And even if it's not a star you're trading for, taking future assets and pushing them in and out makes you better. On average, it does, even when you miss. But it's all about timing. And really, it's about finding a bunch of surplus value and drafting really well and building your team and getting them close enough so where pushing all your chips in the middle means that you'll win, right? So I'm not only disappointed in how Phoenix played, I think it's a very doomed situation right now. And there's a couple of teams that I would almost put in their tier where it's like, I'm really worried about what the Clippers are going to do, man, because they're so old. But at least Ballmer is giving them a new arena.
Yeah.
And that seems like it's going to be pretty cool. And I like their rebrand, so it could be worse.
All these teams that went out and got stars, man, they're eventually going to have to pay the piper. Like, it's coming. It's not going to be next year. It's probably not going to be 2 years from now, but 3 years down the line, we'll probably see Phoenix has lost KD. They've probably maybe they lost another superstar. They're not winning a title. And, yeah, I think they're the obvious pick, dude. The fact that they couldn't get one against Minnesota, the thing that really made me angrier about Phoenix more than anything else was, like, the lack of passion that I saw from Phoenix and the lack of fight that I saw out of this team, man. I don't know what I expected because, like you mentioned, we're getting like Eric Gordon as your fourth best player. There's a difference, man. It's like, yeah, you go in on these stars. You also have no role players that do any little things that complement these guys at all. That's like, you got to have quality basketball players down the roster, man. It's just the reality of basketball in this. You're not rocking with, who did the 2013 Heat have, man? Like, I don't know, dude. You're not going to be able to survive with the league is just so much more talented now than it was back then, dude.
Ray Allen disrespect.
Shout out Ray Allen, man. Sad. Ray Allen's the guy, but it's like there's just no quality basketball players down the rotation. The Suns, I don't know if the Suns are going to win a freaking series, man. Like you say, it might be obvious looking at it now. Dude, I thought the Suns, I guess I was just living in 2018, man. I thought the Suns, Lakers, and the Warriors were all going to be like top 6 seeds and all really tough outs. I thought there was no way this team didn't at least take a couple games in the first round. Like, yeah, I think they might be looking on at this as a grand scale. You guys tell me how you feel. They might have the worst future in the league, bro. Like, there's nothing really encouraging to look forward to. There's no young assets. There's no young players. We have 2 to 3 years of these three guys and nothing else, and then we're back to the Tyler Ulis, Alex Len, Josh Jackson kind of days, man. We're back at the bottom of the barrel. Like, you can see it coming. It's not like it's staring the Suns right in the face. It's going to come, but I don't really know if there's any other teams with a worse future than Phoenix, man. The fall off is coming. It's going to be very soon.
I'd take the Suns here as well, and I didn't think that they were going to win in the first round, but I did think that they had a chance, and I didn't think that they were going to lose like that.
Yeah, I picked them to lose in 7.
Same.
And I was, it's going to be close, and then I felt like an idiot anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It was just such a complete and total ass-kicking. It's not even that they didn't get one. It's that they were only really competitive in one game. And that was when Book and KD combined for 80, and you got into the quote-unquote shootout, and you still got beat in the shootout. Game 2 was competitive for a while because Ant and Cat both sucked, and you still lost by double digits. Like, it was just humiliating. The surprise isn't that they lost. I didn't have them as a top 10 contender going into the playoffs. As you say, we all picked them to lose here, but we all expected it to be close. The fact that you're that far away is just what was sort of shocking. And the theme of these last couple conversations that you've really been hitting on, Matt, is these teams that go all in, dedicate all of their future assets to aging cores specifically. The Bucks, the Clippers, both of those teams dealt with injuries, but you are more susceptible to injuries when you go all in on aging cores, especially when Kawhi Leonard is a part of that. And then you're left with these teams that just aren't that close, but also have nothing to bank on for the future. And it is one of the worst spots that you can be in as a franchise. I do think the Suns are in the worst of them all, though, because the Bucks, to me, can still try to retool around Dame and Giannis, and they do have the injury factor. If not for that, they very well could have still been in the Eastern Conference Finals. Giannis is just that great. He and Dame have that sort of potential. The Clippers, I don't see a title ceiling for them. I also think they were really, really good when they were dialed in with Kawhi and Harden and PG all healthy this year. And if they retain that, they will continue to be very good if Kawhi is ever healthy. They're not in a good spot, but like at least as a full-strength basketball team, they are clearly better than the Suns. The Suns are just way too far away. The skill sets of their stars are far too redundant. They're just lacking in an identity on the defensive side of the floor. They are consistently going to be one of the weakest in any playoff field. They don't have the assets to dedicate to upgrade their role players. They can't move the one contract you would like to in Bradley Beal. And that's the thing that I've continued to harp on. This team went all in on this core, or trying to salvage their core, after they were in a position where it's like maybe you just don't have the assets to do so anymore. After 2022, when CP3 regresses and he's just not the same asset, DeAndre Ayton is just not the same asset, you can trade for KD. And if they had held on to Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, like, yeah, you would feel better about the future. I don't think they would necessarily be a better basketball team, though. That's just the problem, right? They were, whatever they were, the 6th seed late into that season before the KD trade for a reason, because they just didn't have very good basketball players. Their core had just regressed. And it's easy to say, oh, what a terrible mistake you made going all in on that. But if they hadn't, I don't think they would be in that much better of a current spot. It's just, again, the future where you would have more flexibility and maybe some more optimism. But that's the most disappointing outcome to me.
Yeah, I look at what mistake they made, because I'll say this. The reason why teams are so prone to going all in when they don't really have the hand to do so is because there's just very limited options in the NBA. It's like, unlike the NFL, where kind of from any position, if you have a couple of key guys, you can recover pretty easily. You can't in the NBA. Like, really what cost the Suns a title? Really? They messed up the DeAndre Ayton pick, and they should have taken Luka. That's really what cost them a title.
That's for sure.
Because they played things pretty well. They got to the finals. The Chris Paul trade was a masterpiece. And then that core didn't work out. And you're sitting there like, well, we got to go find another star to trade for. And there was maybe some better options. And definitely what sunk them is trading as much as they did for Kevin Durant, who was just not worth all of your draft picks and Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. You just can't do that. It didn't work. But even if they had had perfect hindsight of knowing which exact trades were the best possible value, it still might not have been enough.
Yeah.
They just needed to draft better. You just have to draft so good, and you have to have one of those top guys, and it makes it so hard in the NBA. And they just didn't. There's a lot of teams right now, though, that are all in a position where really it's not going to end in a title.
Dude, I also put a significant portion of this on Ishbia coming in here in – like, just thinking, we've seen this with a couple of owners now, guys who come in out of basketball, step into sports and expect it to be like easy almost, or it's just, oh, we're gonna get some superstars and it's gonna work. Like, Ishbia came in immediately, right? They make the KD trade, and it's like, okay, oh, this guy's, we're gonna make some changes. We're gonna go do some big things immediately, and immediately makes the Beal trade, and I just think he had a large part in making those decisions, and I don't think they were the right basketball decisions. It's like David Tepper stepping in with the Panthers, man, and like flexing his muscle to get Bryce Young, and like he thinks it's just gonna be easy, and it's like, dude, this is a whole different beast, Tepper. This is it's not Wall Street anymore, man. This is sports. Like, it's not just gonna be, oh, we're gonna throw some money, we're gonna go get one guy, and it's just gonna flip the switch, and we're gonna win a Super Bowl. And Phoenix, it's not just like, oh, we're going to get these big-name superstars and these big contracts and we're going to go win the finals. It's just not that simple, man. And so I do put a little bit of this on Ishbia, too, maybe being a little too gung-ho, man, and going out and literally mortgaging the entire future of his team for a couple of years, man. I think I don't know.
I think trading 2031 first-round draft picks, dude. It's wild.
DB, man.
Super
I think
personal
some of these
example,
guys
by the way, to bring up Tepper with Matt on the show.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
man.
but it's is it not the exact same thing? Mm-hmm. Where this idea where you can just be aggressive, and here's the thing. What's so funny about it, because I think really, 90% of team building is one thing and one thing only. It's drafting well. You have to draft well. That's how you get surplus value. Everybody could go all in. That's how you get surplus value. Yeah. The Panthers did go all in. They spent everything to go try to get a quarterback, and it would have worked if they had,
the right guy.
I'm not gonna
taking the right one.
Yeah.
If they had C.J. Stroud, now we could make some argument about would C.J. Stroud have done well on the Panthers, which I'm sure the answer is no.
But that's where, but that's what I talk about, flexing his owner muscle. In the pre-draft process, everybody said, we had that leaked audio tape of Josh McCown, quarterback coach of the Panthers, walking up to C.J. Hey, C.J., we're ready to have you in Carolina. Like, the rumors out of that draft were that everybody in Carolina's organization wanted C.J. Stroud. He was their guy every part of the way. And then the story coming out of camp was that the only reason the Panthers took Bryce Young was because David Tepper watched one football game and said he wanted Bryce.
Angry.
Again, I cannot confirm or deny that, but it's like, dude, that's the reason that you hire these football minds in place for your organization, to make your football decisions. And you directly undermine all of their work, all of their scouting, all of the assets that you gave up to get into that spot, to get the guy who is the guy, and you do that by getting Bryce. And again, I can't confirm if that's if that's real or not, but that's kind of been what everybody has said that has gone on, and that's the reason that they took Bryce Young.
I believe it. I think Tepper is not only like bad at building the team out, but he's a huge jerk who has an unbelievable amount of like scandals and drama.
Did y'all see the new one that happened this
the hat
past
one?
week?
Or the one where like nobody was sitting around him in the draft room, because it wasn't even one.
A third. Option C, Logan. What's option C?
There was a restaurant that put something up that was critical about David Tepper. You guys know on churches or restaurant signs come in.
I live in the world.
No, what is that?
So the signs where you can change the letters and whatever they say. Somebody was being critical of the Panthers or something, man, on one of the signs. I can't remember exactly what it said. David Tepper.
Molotov cocktail.
This is an owner of the Panthers organization. I don't know about you guys. I'm probably just driving by. I'm minding my business. I got someplace important to be. I'm going to just keep getting it, to my destination. Tepper was so butthurt about this sign that this business in Carolina that they put up. He walked in and had a heated debate in the restaurant with the staff of the organization. And it's like, bro, what are you doing
like
with your life?
That, I mean, you have to be a lunatic to do something like that, man. Really. And it's not his first incident. I will say this, not to rag on him too much, because I've had maybe if we're going to stay hot, probably 4 episodes in a row where I make some offhanded comment about how much the Panthers suck. I do think that Bryce can redeem himself a little bit this year. I don't want to say that I'm completely out on him, but it's tough not to be negative about this Panthers team. And it's definitely looking back on. I was in favor of us moving up to the number 1 overall pick at the time. I thought we needed to be aggressive for a quarterback because we just kept being like, well, we're not in position to do it. It's like, well, we never were. And then, of course, the year that we decide to go all in, it makes us so bad that the pick that we gave up puts us in position. So you know how that all goes. But I have a little bit of hope for them to be like a feisty 5-12 team this year. A little bit of Cardinals action.
I didn't mean to open these wounds for you, Matt. My bad.
Hey, nothing wrong with going 5-12. Somebody's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it. And hopefully it can be us.
Yeah, man. That would be fantastic. It is the interesting thing. Oftentimes, being aggressive is viewed very favorably in the short term. You get the one prized asset. But if it is the wrong fit, or if it's draft capital, if it's the number 1 pick and you do the wrong thing with it, you're not just going to lose. You're not just going to pay for that. You're going to pay big time because you have given up a bunch of positive assets to gain the one gem of the deal. But it's got to be the right gem.
Here's my problem. And I usually am supportive of teams being aggressive, and I think I need to be less so going forward. But I also think this. Teams and front offices, they love to be aggressive, pushing their chips to the middle. When they think they're a move away from winning a title, they're going to make it every time. But when they make that move and they end up being wrong, all of a sudden they sit on their hands. They don't want to be aggressive getting out of it.
Yeah.
Like if you look at Phoenix right now, right this second, if they said, this will not work, we are not close enough, but if we move off of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, we won't have our own picks, but the rebuild could be pretty good. It could still be solid. Then they'd probably be okay. But the teams, they go all in and then they never want to do anything other than that. And it's the sitting on their hands that really puts them in a position where in a couple of years, maybe you're rebuilding from straight up nothing. And it's just 3 or 4 years of not even, feisty rebuild, not even, look at these solid young players, not even Pistons level stuff where they suck, but they've got young guys to watch.
Yeah.
Just straight up nothing. So I think if you want to be aggressive, you have to be aggressive all the time. You have to be aggressive both ways. It's only what makes sense.
It's a good point, but the problem is, Logan and I have discussed this, the sunken cost fallacy, man. Once you go all in, it is a full-on admission of defeat. You know you are not going to get the value back that you gave up for Kevin Durant, right? You're not getting back 2 really good young players and 4 first. Not even close.
You're not. And you'll be bad when you do it, and you won't have your own draft picks, and that won't feel good.
No.
But I can tell you right now, the Brooklyn Nets, for example, dude, it just doesn't, you just would be better off anyway. It's still better anyway, you know?
I agree. Let's talk about Cavs Magic real quick before we get out of here. Because Logan and I didn't react specifically to the end of that series. So we want to discuss it a bit here because the Magic may have lost, but at the end of the day, this is a team led out by a 21-year-old with a 22-year-old as their number 2, and they went 7 in the first round. Are you more encouraged or discouraged by that performance, Matt, from Orlando?
I'm really encouraged by it. I don't know how you could be super discouraged.
Well, just got to give you your options, man. You might not know what the opposite of encouraged is, and then you're sitting there.
And now I do. It doesn't make me feel that much higher on them, but that's already because I felt pretty good about them. I guess at one point, after game 2, I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and wrap this up.
Yeah.
And then they pushed it to, a lead in the second half of game 7, which was really impressive. Obviously, the efficiency from the core players is not going to be that great because of youth and because of spacing, and it's against a very tough defense with tough defenders. Regardless, I think their defensive identity shone through, even against a Cavs team that I don't think is really maybe is not as improved offensively as they looked through those first couple of games. But my opinion on them is still they got to do two things. Paolo's got to become a serious number one, and I'm not talking a number one on a team. I'm talking like a number one top 10 guy, which I think he has the ability to. There's other parts of his game he's got to develop and whatnot, but his passing gives me a lot of faith, and he did a good job overall, and even during some of the ugly shooting games, I didn't think it was too terrible. And then they got to figure out how to build things out as far as keeping their defense while still becoming like a serious shooting team so they can make things easier for their top guys, which I'm honestly worried about. The Klay Thompson stuff, I'm not feeling great about that. That's not the way to go, man.
That's not the move.
He's just not there anymore. So me personally, I'm much more encouraged.
I'm very encouraged. It starts with Paolo, man. I do think Paolo has got that kind of ceiling, dude. I'm all in on him as a number one. The tough shot making that we consistently see from Paolo. He drops 39 in the closeout game, dude, from a guy this young. I don't know how you can't be. And they do have a rock-solid defensive foundation. That's what's so encouraging, too. They were top 3 in defensive rating in the regular season. They've got a lot of young, long athletes here. I love the top 2 duo, Franz and Paolo. I know Franz was inconsistent, but I think he's going to play much better. But it starts with Paolo, man, and he was really impressive to me in this series. I think he's got the tough shot making where I like him in the clutch, where I know if he gets it going, he can just hit these unstoppable pull-up, turnaround jumpers and stuff like that too. But he's got the physical traits where I feel like if he leans more into it, he can be even more dominant. And I think that's going to be really interesting to watch on Paolo's ceiling, right? I think he's got a nice floor right now, but I think his ceiling is ultimately going to be determined by how much he weaponizes his physical traits and how much more he can really get downhill and create easy offense for himself. It's not easy here, dude. It's really freaking tough when you got plotting big men shout out John Isaac, shout out Wendell Carter Jr., man. They just clog stuff up a little bit. And so I do think that is the next step for them, Matt. I think it's how do they find the balance of keeping that great defensive identity but also getting a higher offensive ceiling. Personally, I'm willing to sacrifice those guys, I think. Not all of them, but maybe sacrificing a guard like a Fultz, shopping him like a Cole Anthony. I'm locked in on Suggs. Suggs, I think you have to keep. Great point of attack defender. The shooting that we got from him in this series, he's a core foundational piece of this team that you have to hold on to. But the rest of the guys I'm willing to shop to find that superstar kind of guard, man. And that guy, I think, unlocks everything that Orlando can do. You can weaponize Paolo more in the as a roller and as a pick and pop threat. You can utilize Franz in the same way. Franz can be a little more of an off-ball weapon, but really a guy that can take some of that offensive load off of Paolo, take some possessions, handle the ball, and just freaking shoot, man. There's nobody, man. When we're getting Wendell Carter threes and John Isaac threes, John Isaac had a couple of good games here, but you're just asking these guys to shoot above their means, and there's so many half-court possessions that just go to waste because you don't respect anybody. The Magic's foundation is great, and I think they're going to be contending in the Eastern Conference for years to come. But it really is about finding that next asset, man, that guy that can put them over the top. And I think they've got a lot of young assets too, man. Orlando's one of those teams, like you said, Matt, earlier. They've built through the draft. They've made trades on the margin, and now they're sitting here with a really great foundation and a lot of young assets that I think a lot of teams would be interested in, man. It's about finding that next guy that can do it for them. But they're not far away, and I buy into this is a young core three, man. Suggs, Paolo, and Franz. I think they've got something special for the future.
I'm encouraged by this series. The biggest thing is just how impressive Paolo was, and the series got off to a rough start for him. It was just a brutal start offensively for Orlando, but we saw a lot of turnovers, a lot of tough jumpers that weren't falling, and it's not that his shot diet got much easier. I did think that he used his physicality well, and he used his size advantage well to get some solid looks from mid-range. But ultimately, he just put on an incredible display of tough shot making. He was 55% from mid-range in this series, 40% from deep. Paolo didn't shoot near that well in the regular season. You can't expect him to just replicate that. But having that in your tool bag, where you can just get to a decent spot on the floor and deliver that sort of tough shot making, it was very impressive. And I thought an encouraging debut because that's a tough matchup and that's a tough situation. He became just the 8th 21-year-old ever to average 27 a night in a postseason, joined MJ, T-Mac, LeBron, AD, Luka, Ja, Ant. So pretty damn good company there. Franz had an awful Game 7 and just was missing his floaters, was really struggling to finish around the rim. I thought Evan Mobley made some great plays there. But I thought also had some really great games in this series. Game 4 and Game 6, like, Franz is the best player on the floor. So that to me is still ultimately maybe not actively encouraging, but it doesn't move the needle with me on Franz. Like, he had a bad game at the worst time, but he also had some really great games when they needed it. And I just love him as a number 2. I think he has such a great versatile skill set. I think he's going to be really good. So Paolo has to be that legit number 1 on a title team kind of guy. I view him as being like a back half of the top 10 kind of guy at his best, which maybe if you nail everything around him, that's good enough. I think that he still has so much more to unlock, so much that can make life easier on him. And I would already be like, all right, let's add that really high-level guard offensively. Let's do what it takes because they have assets, dude. And this is what Jason Timpf pitched the other week when we were on his show. We talk about the Suns blow-up. He pitched a book trade to Orlando. The Suns get back immediate assets, Jalen Suggs, Wendell Carter Jr., Jonathan Isaac. And if the Magic had Devin Booker, like how far away would they be from being a contender right now? And I don't think that that is at odds with their timeline because Book is only 26, if I'm not mistaken. He could be your offensive number 1, and I don't love him as the best guy on a title team, but if he maintains this level and Paolo ascends and you have like 2 top 12, top 15 guys, wherever they may fall, and you maintain a really sound defensive identity, which, again, you would be giving up some important players to that identity. Suggs, I wouldn't want to give up. Jonathan Isaac, when healthy, is just such a monster defensively. But you're not going to win with labored offense in the NBA. And I think they just need a guard who threatens defenses with the ball in their hands. I love Suggsy. I would like to keep on to him. But if I had a chance to land Book, I'd probably do it. It doesn't have to be that. They just clearly need to upgrade in a big way. Because as much as I like Paolo and Franz, like, they just need help, man. They need more shot making. They need more creation alongside them.
You don't think they're giving too much up in that deal?
I think they're giving a lot up. But I think Book would be a total game changer for Orlando.
I wonder if no Isaac, no Suggs would just be too big of a defensive loss. I mean, they'd still be pretty good. It's the problem with discussing any of this is that the Suns are not going to blow it up. They're not going to do the cool thing. They're going to sit
and they're
on their
definitely not
hands,
going to trade Book specifically.
No.
Yeah.
So
sorry, such a stupid point. I regret even saying it. That's so embarrassing.
And I'm mad that you did. I do think it's
time.
funny though that Bradley Beal is like the only player with a legit no trade clause in the entire NBA. That
so
really
awesome.
Puts the bow on.
Does he actually?
He doesn't even need.
There's
it.
other
Nobody
guys
would trade
who
for him.
have one. Yeah, he doesn't even need it. There's other guys who have one because of like technical, like if you accept the qualifying offer, you get a no trade clause and stuff like that.
Brad Beal has
but
that
he's
kind of
the only
leverage,
person
man.
who has that like written into his contract that he has a no trade clause.
Such a sick contract. Let's just give the Wizards a round of applause for that one, man. That's a hell of an organization. They do great work over there. I feel good about Orlando. I think they legitimately have 2 guys who down the line are top 20 players to me. Suggs is an awesome role player, like such an awesome role player. The prototype that you want from your second guard. They just need a first guard, which isn't a super easy thing to find. And I do think, as painful as it may be, at some point, they are going to have to shed some of these dudes who you love, who give you that defensive identity, just because you have to have the offensive punch to truly contend. And that's the goal for Orlando. Right now, all cool being a young, scrappy, fun, defensive-minded team, 2 ascending stars, tough first-round exit. That's awesome when you're 21 and 22. You don't have to rush the timeline, but at some point, you got to take that leap. That's my take.
What about a Trae Young trade? Y'all like that?
Yeah, sign me up, bro. Sign me up for a Trae Young trade in a lot of spots, dude. There's a lot of teams
for real.
that need a second guy offensively or a co-first guy, whatever it may be. Just need more offensive pop. And I think Trae Young would be excellent in a lot of those spots. San Antonio.
I saw Bleacher Report floating LaMelo to the Magic. Which,
how would you feel about that?
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Why? The Hornets trading one of their key young players to another team and going or at least trying to go the exact same direction to another young team. Most trades that happen are because either a star asks out or two teams are going in the opposite direction. Like, I'm an old team trying to rebuild and you're, trying to win right now or whatever.
The Hornets are like, we want gritty role players. That's what we need to pull us, put us over the top.
Yeah, man. I have my concerns with LaMelo. I mean, if he can't play, he can't play. And really what's more frustrating about it is he hasn't really gotten a chance to develop because he doesn't play. I mean, I think his ceiling as a player is really, really high. I mean, I'm super biased. I always feel like if he could just get more physical and be better around the rim, he could be super, super special. But every time he gets an ankle injury, I just feel like it's more and more of just all right, we're going to pull up for three immediately in this possession and that stuff. And it's he's so talented. And it's just not going to be fully unlocked at this rate. But I don't think you can give up on that if you're Charlotte. I mean, that's just – people are we'll just sit and build around Brandon Miller. It's look, I like Brandon Miller a lot from what he's showed in his first year. This isn't Wembanyama, though,
Your
the idea
Scoot
we're just going to
agenda
move
is
off
still
the star
fueling you.
for first.
Your Scoot agenda is fueling you. No,
you think how you think Brandon Miller is so good that you should trade? Of course, which is so stupid because the whole Brandon Miller argument, or a lot of it, was dude, he fits so well next to LaMelo.
Yes. No.
1 year, dude, we got to get rid of LaMelo because we have Brandon Miller now. I don't.
And also,
Agreed.
what incentive? What kind of message are you sending to Brandon Miller? And what incentive does he have to play basketball if you take away the only good player that he plays with? Hey, Brandon, just I'm not saying. Look, man, I'm not saying the Hornets don't have any.
That's not true. He's not the only. No, Mark Williams is pretty good, who also didn't play. And he did play last year. He wasn't as strong as he maybe was as a rookie.
Dude, I feel so bad for Matt. Both of your teams that we've come on here and talked about today, man. Matt's most optimistic take about the Panthers was maybe we'll go 5-12. Do the Panthers? I mean, do the Hornets win over 30 games next year, man?
Look, I truly and honest to God believe it. If the Hornets could stay even a little bit healthy, they'd at least be out of the the third overall pick range. But at this point, I can't predict it. However, I'll say this: they were doomed the moment that they decided not to address their bench at all. That's why all of a sudden they got a little bit of life when they traded for Bertans and Grant Williams. Do you understand who was coming off the bench for Charlotte before they made those deals at the deadline? Trey Mann was a revelation for Charlotte. They were playing some of the worst players in the entire NBA, truly.
Go Hornets, man. What else is there to say? The tough thing about trading LaMelo, on top of the fact that it doesn't make sense with your timeline, is you're just not going to get appropriate value back for how good he can be because of the availability.
Maybe he never plays again, but if you're Charlotte, this is the way to put you just have to take that risk. If we're not even willing, we got to see it out kind of no matter what happens, man.
Yeah.
I mean, and if we're not willing to do that, if we sell low, it's yeah, maybe that makes a squad we can build around Brandon Miller a little bit better, but then we'd immediately turn around and be looking for another star. I don't know if it's a guarantee that happens. Or who knows, maybe we'll really, really stink again next year.
Hey,
probably.
Let's hope for it. You keep on racking up draft capital, man. It's a bummer to have LaMelo be hurt for almost all of this year. This just isn't the year.
Look, it's no secret. This is the year they get the number 1 overall pick. First time in 30-something years.
They get Sar. They get Sar, defensive
and
foundation.
They'd get Star, and I would talk myself into it. It could be pretty good.
Listen, the number 1 overall pick is always a good thing, but comparatively, it's not as great as it normally is this year.
People forget, I know it was the Wizards who were a ping pong ball away or whoever the hell, but it was me sitting on the couch watching the Hornets be 1 spot away from getting Wembanyama as far as I'm concerned.
That's what people forget. They forget when they're thinking about the draft. When they think about Wemby's legacy, frankly, the one thing that they don't think about nearly enough is Matthew Sponhour sitting on his couch, fingers crossed, eyes wide.
Please.
Yeah. Please, can we get the French guy? No. Sorry, Carolina.
But at least
fan.
we avoided disaster. Something stupid that would have made no sense, like drafting Scoot or whatever.
Yeah, God, that would have been bad. First of all, not a good fit. Second of all, not nearly as good as Brandon Miller. That would have been bad.
And these are just simple things that people who watch basketball.
Yeah, this is something that everybody who watched basketball knew in the pre-draft process.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, this is an old-fashioned razzing because Matt was a big Scoot guy over Brandon Miller. It's something we disagreed about, and so now I'm sort of busting his balls, as they say. And that's the note we're going to end on. Just
as they
good-natured
say.
Fun. Matt,
Scoot's still going to be...
Okay, no, settle down. A delight, as always, to have you on. And listen, I'm not out on Scoot. I just think Brandon Miller is better. And
you think he sucks? It's okay.
No, I don't. No, I don't. Don't put words in my mouth, or I will sue you. I will hit you with a cease and desist faster than you can believe, pal. All right. Appreciate you coming on, though, on that note. Always a great time having you on, pal. Everybody go follow Matt everywhere. Twitter, just do it. Spawn Hour. TikTok, just do it. Spawn Hour. Listen to the Stay Hot podcast. It's fantastic. Whoa, I'm not going to let you out of here without discussing our beef, actually. Yeah, pal. You thought you could just get away with that. Oh, you forgot.
Shoot.
Yeah.
I forgot about,
I annihilated you publicly.
Yeah.
You and your pals with your little podcast.
What did you say again? I honestly,
You.
I hardly forget.
You remember, pal. All right, let me pull up the lyrics. Hold on. No, I'm not going to do that. But
I was moved by the musical.
The musical moved you more than the diss track?
I'm surprised that you thought of that, off rip.
Yeah, it was super weird. I don't know. I don't really know where that came from. But I realized, so for those who are missing the context, on the Stay Hot podcast, Matt really wasn't even involved in it, actually. And that's the funny thing. I got tipped from inside, bro. They think Kendrick has a mole. I have a mole. Theo's girlfriend texts me while you guys are recording the podcast. They're talking shit about you right now. They're saying they'd make a better musical. And I immediately sprung into action that very night. But
that's
how
you got it done so quickly. You had somebody tell you before
I had a mole.
The episode even dropped.
I had a mole.
And it made so much sense because I'm like, did Carson just drop everything to make this right away? It's like, jeez.
Dude, I mean, I still got it done in a day. But yeah, I had a mole on the inside. And then I watched back once the video was actually up. Once the episode was actually up, and I was like, oh, wow, they were super chill about it. You didn't even say anything. Theo was the only one who said anything remotely disparaging. And then I was like, I already have this whole diss track written. But then I was like, if I just do a diss track, that doesn't work because I didn't realize you guys on the episode were like, that's how it all started with a rap beef. And Theo was like, oh, yeah, I think Carson would cook us in a rap beef. And then I was like, well, I can't just put out a diss track then because that doesn't prove the point. The point has to be that I make a musical. So that's when I made the musical. And I'm glad that it
the Stay Hot boys have never recovered, man.
And you guys haven't. I can't imagine your viewership survived.
When I'm off camera, and I think this is true for Bladen and Theo as well, we're hitting our head and saying stupid, stupid, stupid pretty much every day since then.
Moaning and groaning, I would presume. I don't know what else there is to do. Bladen made it sound like he was going to come back with something.
Shaking our head, it's... I think we thought about it and we just didn't put it together.
Lame.
I mean,
you took the J. Cole approach, pal, whether you like it or not.
I know.
Smart, actually.
We should have. I didn't come out by the time that we should have done the whole J. Cole thing. That would have been very funny.
I think that had happened. But of course you couldn't because you slandered J. Cole. You cornered yourself.
That's true.
All right. Well, do we have anything else to plug? I think that we got you covered, right? Is there anything else, Matt, that you want to shout out?
No, that's it.
Perfect. Lovely man, the Matthew Sponhour. Everybody go check him out. If you want a chance to speak with him, join our Discord. He's in there. He's very active.
I'm active.
Mm-hmm. He's frequently posting edits of us, frequently posting AI-rendered images of us in various outfits, in various settings. It's really good stuff. So check that out. Follow us wherever you want. Listen to the show on YouTube. We'll be back again tonight reacting to the day's action, Knicks Pacers, and of course Timberwolves Nuggets game 2, which should be super fun. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Get our merch if you want. Logan's not wearing the NerdSesh hat today, which is sad. Normally he is, but that's at thevolume.com. So with that, as always, one last shout out to Matt. I've been Carson Breber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And I've been Matthew Sponhour.
And this was NerdSesh.